thanks for doing this. We have been talking for a while around these topics, so I thought it would be a good one to get your thoughts on and, formalize this in sort of a recording which can help benefit a lot of our viewers. You and I have been speaking about this, and we have also launched a version of Smart Carrot around that particular aspect of IT services, managed services, etc. And of course, you have been in this industry for a long time and an expert in that area. In our initial conversations with a lot of managed services organizations, Arvind, what we are seeing is the word consistency and scale of consistency come up when we are discussing operations, when we are discussing customer management and customer success with managed services IT organizations. So in your sort of expertise and your experience, what are some of the most common areas where you think consistency is being compromised today, and how does it hurt managed services, IT services organizations?
So interesting question. So let me start by framing why is the consistency an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So normally in every IT service organization, consistency takes a back seat due to staff's experience with clients' technology assets and processes.
Mm-hmm.
Second, it is the given time to the employees to read about internal procedures and processes is not sufficient.
Right.
And not everyone's learning path is same.
Right.
Okay. Thirdly, the unlearning of the earlier processes that they have offboarded from.
Yeah.
Okay. And procedures, be it technology platforms, be it type of assets, type of problems, type of processes or procedures require an unlearning process and time.
Right.
Okay. And finally, the turnaround time always is about improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is never baseline whether the current team with the changing environment, changing practices, changing technology assets will be able to deliver against that turnaround time. So they're under severe pressure.
Right.
So the inconsistencies do occur because of these reasons.
Right.
Okay. So let's take a few examples, as you said, where does this inconsistency occur?
Right.
Okay. Normally in outsourcing industry, the work transition is very well understood.
Right.
Okay. Transitions normally are stable because they are often about lift and shift. Okay. Between team members, between vendor organizations, or between location spread diverse teams.
Yeah.
But the procedure is documented. The same procedure has to be repeated. And there is no uncertainty involved in the process.
Yeah.
However, when any change is brought in during the transition,
right.
Okay, it could be change in scope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is the expectation management.
Yeah.
That we expect you to manage this outcome now
versus
what we used to deliver earlier. Or there is inconsistency in the documentation or incompleteness in the documentation. Or the team members itself, right, do not understand the difference between work process and the outcomes that they will be measured on.
Right.
Okay, leads to this inconsistency. So transitions, while naturally, because they have been done so many times by organizations, the transitions have to be monitored.
Right.
And it's the last step, okay, but a critical step before a new service regime is initiated by a new vendor.
Right.
Okay. But this is one part of it. The other part of it is that in the selling process of outsourcing industry, it's not about transitioning of an older service or a lift and shift from one vendor to another vendor organization. It is also about service improvement.
Right.
Or service change. Okay. which means that there is service decommissioning happening and service commissioning happening. Okay. Some are done during the transition phase, and some are done post the transition phase, and some are done pre the transition phase. So which means that transition is not a complete story. Onboarding is the complete story when you do outsourcing games.
Right.
Essentially, it means that the service which is proposed, the service which is running, the gap between that has
Right.
to be mapped during the onboarding phase.
Right. Right.
Okay. And thus it is larger than a transition phase.
Right.
Because not all service planned will be delivered immediately when you effectively take over the services or the outsourcing program billing starts.
Yeah.
Okay. So often this leads to inconsistencies in experience of the customer.
Right.
Because the customer has not bought into the service, the onboarding plan. He's been bought in by the transition plan.
Right.
So the full story has not been told.
Right.
And the full story is that there is a pre-boarding exercise done, which means that the new services that you will launch as soon as you come as a vendor, it could be tools, it could be a new cloud platform.
Yeah.
Okay. It could be a new location that you have to commence from.
Yeah.
Pre-boarding steps have to be done.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the onboarding steps have to be done, which means the new procedures jointly agreed between the two companies and the introduction to both the organizations and the work practices have to be understood by both the parties.
Right.
The third is the transition step itself, which is handover of the process and your employees knowing in the onboarding step, okay, about the organization itself, okay, and the environment, and understanding the historical data or the escalations, because you have to manage the outliers.
Yeah.
Okay, because the outliers deliver the inconsistency.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
And then the transition, but there will be sort of number of things that will continue post the transition, which is called post onboarding activities.
Right.
Which means that certain services will get decommissioned later.
Right.
And newer services will be commissioned. So onboarding your own employees and onboarding the users are very critical.
Right.
So in my mind, the two big processes which require attention in outsourcing industry are the work transition and the onboarding of a client.
Right.
Okay. But there are some internal issues within the outsourcing industry, which is the clients don't need to be bothered about, which is internal employee onboarding.
Right.
The compliance checks.
Right.
Okay. Because then there is an internal auditor, internal quality checker, internal finance controllers who come into the play to see whether we are delivering the value that was proposed.
Right.
Right. They are the conscious keepers.
Right.
Okay. Then there is this whole process of escalation has not been tested.
Right.
So because escalation again is multi-level.
Right.
And clients and people involved in the escalation process are normally not in the day-to-day job and may have not been introduced to the client.
Correct.
So the escalation managers may not know sufficiently about the client.
Correct.
And the client in running operations. And lastly, again, when you are doing in outsourcing new service development, okay, those developments may not go as per plan. They may get delayed, deferred. They may not deliver the value. You carry what is called a technical debt or a quality debt into a service transition. So these are some things that need to be addressed, and that is why I am been a firm opinion that transition is not good enough,
Yeah.
and onboarding
Yeah.
has to be focused on. And because onboarding is very complex,
Yeah.
classical methods of doing transition planning, which is Excel based,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
are not sufficient.
Yeah.
And because it is an elongated time, you will need to constantly monitor what is happening with at the various and various stakeholders. Second, what's happening in the various stages of the process of the work or the onboarding. Okay. And it's an elongated time. It is not just 3 months.
Right.
It is
Right.
spread across multiple quarters.
Right.
And when it spreads across multiple quarters, normally all leaders and stakeholder managers tend
Yeah.
to get defocused away from the client. So
Yeah.
that is why experience suffers.
Yeah, and I think it's a very great example of the complexity involved and the impact it eventually has on your own business matrix, because this really starts off, a significant portion of the customer's experience and journey with the vendor here or the service provider here, and not handling that has downstream impact. So you mentioned very two three important points here. So there are certain must do activities from an internal service provider standpoint. There are also some must do activities from the customer's standpoint, and
Yeah.
on both sides there are multiple roles involved, which is where we have seen it become a challenge in driving consistency through current approach. Most organizations, like you said, approach it through a document, through Excel based tracking, and obviously project management tools are there, but they are more oriented around tracking the timeline and not necessarily the experience or the actual activities itself on both sides.
Yeah. So
And how?
normally, essentially, people use three kinds of tools. One is called an obligation register, which is what am I obliged to deliver against my contractual responsibilities.
Right.
And within that is a subset called SLAs. How am I performing against those metrics?
Right.
Second is the risk register.
Right.
What's the quality of risk I am carrying, and has the risk been reducing or the risk risk increasing?
Right.
And what's the propensity of that risk occurring?
Right.
And the third is the timeline itself.
Right.
And one thing that people do take advantage of, okay, is the CSATs
Right.
to get confidence that they are doing well. But CSAT is not a good enough metrics today.
Yeah.
In a complex outsourcing deal, there are two more metrics that need to be added.
Yeah.
Okay. One is what we all know about, which is classically the net promoter score. Okay. Because the net promoter score will always take a larger time view. Okay. And it is focusing on what I expected versus what is being delivered.
Right. Right.
Versus CSAT is all about how did I complete the task
Right.
or the activity or a
Right.
bunch of activities.
Right.
Right? So the scope is very different.
Yeah.
So it is worthwhile measuring NPS.
Yes. Yes.
But in outsourcing deals, the biggest challenge, which is I don't think there are good enough metrics, and I've been trying to track those, and I'm never able to find, and I'll be like to be updated on, is the time to value.
Yeah.
How much time is it taking to deliver the value proposed?
Yeah.
Most of the times I know the financial value gets delivered because it's the billing cycle.
Yeah.
So the clients would see a reduction in billing.
Yeah. Correct.
And most of the outsourcers feel that as long as I'm giving the financial value, that's good enough.
Yeah.
But time to value is very, very critical because that will define your renewal and growth in an organization.
No, 100% agree. And it also ties into how well you start that transition exercise itself, or how well you do, because your time to value can significantly go up if you don't do it well.
Correct. And you carry the debt for a longer time.
Yeah, up to 100%. So we'll probably get to that in a bit as well. So one related thought, getting back to the theme of consistency in this discussion, Arvind. So we know in the development world, in development processes, DevOps, Agile, etc., we have been using the term runbooks fairly consistently. You know, it is of late that organizations like Smart Carrot and yourself also propagating the concept of consistent playbooks, right? And we're having a lot of discussions around that. So in your definition, or in your experience, how do you differentiate between the two? I think this is one thing where a lot of people get confused. So what is a run book and what is a playbook according to you?
So a tactical or a transactional method of completing a task
Mm-hmm.
or achieving a set of activities with a clear end goal is a
Mm-hmm.
run book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything that has a broader sense and requires multiple tactical processes that need to be executed. And secondly, the actionables is not dependent on one individual, but a larger team.
Right. Right.
Okay. There you need a playbook.
Right. Right.
So, which means if it is an individual driven task and the tasks are very simple,
Right.
they can be supported by run books.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Correct.
But when the task has multiple steps
Yeah.
or multiple procedures spreading across different levels in the organization hierarchy or different role
Right.
members
Right.
performing that task,
Right.
playbook comes into play.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right. Very well said. So, and it aligns to what we just discussed. If you were to take the example of the onboarding itself, and you have very correctly and very succinctly broken it up into transition and then pre-transition and then post-transition. There are 3-4 sub-processes involved in that onboarding process itself, which includes a lot of interdependencies between different roles on both sides, both the service provider as well as the customer. And I think it's a good example of what a playbook can potentially be like, because then you can actually have multiple roles across both these organizations participating in a certain sequence of activities, and thereby making the whole process more consistent. So I think it's a good example and a good explanation of runbook versus playbook. What is the challenge? Yeah, sorry, Arvind, go ahead.
Let me just interject. One, as you were talking, suddenly it popped up in my mind from an ITL perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. An incident.
Yeah.
Okay. Incidents are simple, can be what are called minor incidents and major incidents.
Mm-hmm.
Minor incidents can be normally executed by runbooks.
Right.
Major incidents,
Yeah.
okay, or major changes in a client environment require multiple teams to get involved.
Right.
So when such major incidents happen or emergency changes have to be done, okay, they should be run by playbooks.
Right.
Because it is running across multiple sets of issues. And this has become more evident, especially when you say digital services. More services are becoming digital. It's not about just my laptop is not working or my internet connection is not working.
Right.
My mouse is not stable or whatever, or
Right.
my printer, I'm not able to attach to a printer.
Right.
It is about I'm able to log on to an application,
Yeah.
but I'm not able to get the service, or the service is inconsistent.
Right.
Largely, anything associated in ITIL process called a problem,
Right.
which is not easy to diagnose,
Right.
should be supported by a playbook.
Right.
Anything which is about major change or emergency change
Right.
is to be supported by playbook.
Right.
Anything which is a major incident again needs to be supported by playbook.
Right. Right. No, very well said, actually. So, which also makes me ask you, playbooks, according to me at least, Arvind, I think also is very well oriented towards driving change management at times. Like what you said, right beginning of the call, that a lot of times organizations know what they want to drive as best behavior and best practice. They have it documented somewhere, but they're not able to implement it because it is there in that document, it's there in a Word document, a PDF, or an Excel, or a PowerPoint. How do you convert them into actual behavior on the ground? That these are must do's which has to happen every time in this situation, right? So I think now if you're looking at behavior change, the only way is also I think the playbook concept, that now you are actually enforcing accountability and behavior change over a period of time effectively, hence aligning to that change management process. So any thoughts on this one?
So let me just think this through. So let me just articulate it with experience.
Mm-hmm.
An experienced role holder is able to perform a simple task in a variable condition easily,
Correct.
whereas an inexperienced staff or less experienced
Mhm.
staff takes a while to complete the task.
Right.
Okay. And what we are seeing is that more and more automation that is happening is addressing simple tasks and
Right.
simple processes,
Right.
which were being done by typically what we call L1
Correct.
level staff.
Level of skill, yes, correct.
Yes. Now, the tasks that are coming to L1 are getting more and more complex.
Yeah.
And it is no longer a function of that L1 doing the task himself. He has to escalate that ticket to L2.
Yeah.
When an L1 escalates a ticket to L2, his metrics on his ability to close a call falls down.
Right.
The task is complex. It
Yeah.
requires, and he
Yeah.
does not have the authorization sometimes to complete that process, but his metrics falls down.
Right.
And his escalation is right, because if he does not escalate and get an experienced person to perform that task or authorized person to perform the task, and if he were to do it, we introduce security incidents.
Right.
We introduce what we discussed at the beginning, inconsistent experiences. He
Mm-hmm.
may get it right, he can get it wrong.
Yeah.
When he gets it right, we say great initiative. When he gets it wrong,
Yeah.
the entire lack of experience is never given the weightage that he was trying to perform. He did take an initiative. And
Yeah.
all this is impacting the behavioral capability of the individual.
Right.
So run books essentially typically create a very clerical mindset worker
Right.
who would follow the procedure to the toe.
Right.
Whereas playbooks create a agile team leader.
Yeah.
Okay. A potential leader, doesn't matter what that level in that organization is. Not all leaders have to be CEOs or CXOs. You
Correct.
become leader of a work process, of a work area, of a work set of tasks if you show that decision making ability.
Right.
Playbook offers the the human gets involved in making the choice,
Yeah.
and how he makes the choice will help him to improve and harness his knowledge and experience, and it also demonstrates a continuous improvement direction rather than being penalized for not running the run book correctly.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, great example, Arvind. So, I think we would love to continue this discussion, but I think it's a good initiation into this world of, playbook, runbook, and consistency. And so, one last question for you on today's session, at least, is what is the cost of being inconsistent, according to you? So why should organize, you have been on, obviously you have got a lot of experience, you're on the board of multiple organizations, you have seen it absolutely top down, you have also been in hands dirty doing actual process implementation work. So where does it sort of hurt being inconsistent?
So 3 places. First, your inability to meet the commitment, okay, the obligation, which means you are behind your SLA metrics.
Right.
That itself is a warning bell that your renewal, if you don't recover this service, will lead to competition getting introduced
Right.
and a secure deal getting into a bidding situation.
Right.
Okay, which means a client acquired, you are not going to get the lifetime value as you had thought you should get from the client. So it impacts that.
Yes.
The second is it compromises if the only if you are meeting the SLAs, but the SLA experiences and the service quality is patchy, it impacts your growth. Because while you are remain an existing vendor, you are able to retain your portfolio, growth gets compromised because people don't want to take risks in newer areas with you. Okay. So growth gets compromised. Okay. So a renewal gets in a competitive situation. Second, growth gets compromised. Third, the voice of the customer no longer becomes a referral client. Okay. So in my view, right, a client not being referenceable in an outsourcing world
Huge
is
cost.
not a sign.
Huge cost.
But a large part of organizations' revenue continues to be with clients who don't want to refer you in the industry, don't want to be announced that you are their partner. So one has to introspect, the industry has to introspect. Why is that so? Why aren't we? What is the index of referenceability?
No, a very good point you bring out, because the other macro trend we have been seeing over the past couple of years in this industry also is larger contracts being broken up into multiple smaller ones. They're not willing to sign up on a large, big a contract as you would 10 years back. So now it is a set of mini contracts.
And also tenure.
Also tenure. Yeah, absolutely. So now it's not only referenceability with one customer on a large contract, it may become with one customer 10 contracts and you need referenceability in all 10.
Okay. And so, I mean, I think referenceability and repeatability are important elements. Repeatability within the client, which means if you are doing work in one region or one industry segment or one vertical of the client, are you repeating yourself in another vertical or another location or in another within that group company to another company? That is repeatability. Referenceability is outside of the client jurisdiction. The client stands up and refers you to this. I think one measure, and we've often discussed this, is how do we do that? What's your conversion factor of new bids that you are making in an existing client? Okay, so how many wins are you getting? So if you're making 10 bids and you're only winning 2, that means your repeatability is only 20%. Whereas an existing client, the repeatability ideally should be 100%.
Yes.
If not less.
Agreed. 100%. So this I wanted to add, as you were speaking on the impact of inconsistency, where it hurts, and you've said those 3 points very, very well. I also feel it adds to your cost of delivery and predictability internally. It makes it very difficult for you to predict outcomes and forecast out, as well as plan for growth or for resource planning or cost, everything, if you are inconsistent. So a large part also of help you get when you become consistent, even in this transition process, as an example, is now you are more predictable, not only of the outcome and the tenure and the timeline, but also of cost, which is significant for internal management groups and KPIs.
So unfortunately, we are in an industry where innovations and technology changes are bringing price reduction or effort reduction. Okay. Secondly, the dollar exchange or the the currency exchange is also giving that advantage. The third is work from home as a practice is eliminating a lot of costs.
Right.
So yes, principally what you have said is I completely agree. But when you are able to isolate that cost into that structured thinking without understanding the context on which the productivity has been maintained, advantages have been received because of currency fluctuation, currency advantages, because work from home costs have come down, right? Or you've eliminated the additional allowances or freebies that earlier you were giving to retain talent, okay, or work in a far off location, those disappear. And the new technologies that are like Gen AI now, but earlier many RPAs and many automation techniques, AI ops, etc., or BPM platforms or low code platforms, all they have reduced the amount of intelligence and effort required to execute a task. Right? And the clients normally measure this in terms of price that they get. You are right. It is an internal challenge, and I am writing about this in a new article on how Gen AI is going to impact the resource demand in the IT industry and ITS industry. Based on my understanding, clearly there is only time will tell where is the industry heading.
Right.
But obviously Gen AI is creating a new demand because customers will take advantage of it. But what's the consumption for internal productivity and efficiency? How much reduced manpower an organization needs? Those numbers will not be very easily visible.
Right.
And we'll have to use conjectures to figure that out initially.
So great talking to you, Arvind. I think there's obviously lots more to explore as we go through this. I've always been a proponent very significantly of consistency in operations and hence, the playbooks being propagated now in this industry. But yeah, we look forward to more discussions with you. And I think this is very valuable to all our viewers. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.